But the puppies are like the size of medium dogs.
You shoot it. Yeah.
It's gonna protect you from mountain lions and stuff. All right. You don't have to go very far. There's mountain lions by my house. In Walnut Creek.
What do they look like?
Mountain lions? They look like lions without the mane. Yeah. They're not as big as like the African lion, which is one of the biggest cats in the world. They're like the size of like a big mountain lion would be smaller than the Russian bear dog.
Good.
But they can still take you down. Even an adolescent mountain lion that's 1 or 2 years old can still kill you. And that's usually the ones that kill people or attack people are usually adolescents or they're sick and injured. And they can't catch regular prey, so they just stop things on like the open space. If it happens to be a human, you'll never see it coming. You'll never hear it. Yep. Yep. There was an incident about 6 months ago where a guy, I think it was in Southern California, he was running and got attacked. And he killed it with his bare hands. Killed it and broke its neck. Because it was a juvenile. If it was a regular sized one, there's no shot he would have killed it.
That was a bear.
No, it was a mountain lion he killed with his bare hands because the thing was attacking him. Yep. Good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are around this beautiful earth we have. Again, my name is Diallo. Today is Monday, October 26, 2020.
What time?
For this activity, we're going to be doing current events and maybe mixing some jokes in there. How about that? But we're going to be doing current events just to see what's going on in this mad, mad world, right?
Yeah.
All right. So again, it's October 23rd, 2020. How about time flies, doesn't it?
Yes.
2020, time flies. So we are reading out of the East Bay Times today. We have our regular East Bay Times, we have our local news, we have our sports section. Which section should we go with first?
The news.
Local news or
Yes.
overall news? Let's go, hold on, let me see for a second.
I don't know what the overall means.
Like news around the world, outside being local.
Yeah. It's fully closed. It says fully closed. I don't know.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start off with just the broad news around the world, okay? So if anybody noticed last night, there was a lot of wind going on. And even today, there's gusts of wind here in Northern California, which is bad because right now it's the height of fire danger season.
Yes.
So those winds, they could blow down power lines, and those power lines spark and cause a fire.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm. So power shutoffs as winds pick up. PG&E customers hunker down. Fire crews in action as region braces for Diablos. Wonder what Diablos are. Obviously it means devils, but as violent winds began whipping across a severely parched Northern California on Sunday, PG&E started cutting off power to hundreds of thousands of customers, and fire crews bore down, aiming to prevent another wind-whipped inferno like those that devastated several communities in the recent years. In anticipation of Diablo Winds that could bring the most critical fire conditions of the season, the utility company had warned last week that it would turn off power to some 500,000 customers in an effort to limit the threat of fire sparks by power lines. By Sunday, the plan had been scaled back to about 360,000 customers across 36 counties and 17 tribal communities, sparing some 100,000 homes and businesses in Northern California, including areas of San Ramon to Dublin to Santa Rosa. Some 225,000 already had their power turned off by 6 p.m. Sunday, with more than 100,000 still set to lose electricity overnight, PG&E said. The utility said it would begin inspecting power lines and equipment and restoring services as the winds passed. Citing hazardous winds and extremely low humidity levels, the National Weather Service issued a red flag warning through 5 p.m. Tuesday in North Bay Mountains and East Bay Hills through 11 a.m. today in the coastal regions and the Santa Cruz Mountains. Commonly referred to as Diablo Winds, the strong offshore gales with gusts up to 70 miles an hour atop mountains and 50 miles an hour at lower levels were expected to be at their strongest overnight. So yeah, last night I sleep my window open every single night, especially when it's cool out, and the wind it almost tore off the blinds off my window, and my door was rattling back and forth because the wind was blowing so hard. I woke up a couple times like, someone trying to break in? Oh my gosh.
That's scary.
I know.
Scary.
I almost had to grab my bat and be like, who's breaking into my house? Give him a wallop. So the big concern is that the area that is going to be affected will be a lot more widespread than previous events, said meteorologist Gary Diaz, who noted that the anticipated conditions bore a resemblance to those that led to the devastating Oakland Hills conflagration in 1991. So who was around here in 1991 when the Oakland Hills fire happened? We pretty much, I think we all were. We all lived in California. So the Oakland Hills fires, happened in Oakland near the tunnel, in south of the tunnel, and it burned down pretty much every single house between the Oakland tunnel and Hayward. It burned a lot of houses. My mom's godmom, their house burned down during that time, and they had to rebuild it in San Leandro. And her godfather is actually a firefighter who helped fight the fires, but couldn't save his own home. And then it's interesting. So after the fires up in the hills and all those houses burned down, there was an ordinance that, because the part of the problem was the firefighters couldn't get to the fires because people were evacuating and the fires trying to get up, but because the roads are so narrow and people had cars parked, it was just a cluster. So that when everything burned down, there was an ordinance to make the roads a certain width. They had to be wide, a certain. The only problem is they didn't actually do it. When they started rebuilding the houses, the roads are just as narrow as they ever were. And nowadays, people have a lot more cars per household. So a household, I think, averages 4 cars a household now. So if you're going up to Oakland Hills and the road is just from here to there, I mean, you got cars on both sides where literally only one, if there's cars on both sides, 2 cars can't go in separate directions at the same time. They have to wait and let each other go. That's a hazard. Huge fire hazard.
So it's fixable too.
Well, not now.
Sure it is.
How can you fix that?
One way.
One way? Yeah, but then people are going to not really pay attention to that.
Then they should do it.
You're right about that. One way is a good one.
Yeah.
So the most dangerous wind event of the year came as California already has set a state record for the most acres burned in a year. As of Sunday, this year's fire has consumed more than 4.1 million acres and destroyed at least 9,200 structures and killed 31 people. 4 of the state's 5 largest fires in recorded history have occurred this year, including the August Complex, the state's first fire to burn more than 1 million acres. That's crazy, huh? Man. Let's look at some religion. How about this? Yeah, religion's kind of it's a topic for some people. Pope names 13 new cardinals, including the first Black U.S. prelate. So he's going to be the first Black United States cardinal to wear the red hat. Vatican City. Pope Francis on Sunday named 13 new cardinals, including Washington, D.C. Archbishop Wilton Gregory, who would become the first Black U.S. prelate to earn the coveted red hat. And a surprise announcement from his studio window to faithful standing below in St. Peter's Square, Francis said the churchman would be elevated to cardinal's rank in a ceremony on November 28th. The selection of Gregory won praise from LGBT advocates in the United States, days after Pope Francis grabbed headlines for voicing support for civil unions for gay couples. Other new cardinals included an Italian who was a longtime papal preacher at the Vatican, the Reverend Raniero Cantalamessa, who is a Franciscan friar, the Kigali, Rwanda Archbishop Antoine Kambanda, the Capiz, Philippines Archbishop Jose Ferti Advincula, and the Santiago, Chile Archbishop Celestiano El Braco. Another Franciscan who was tapped is Friar Mauro Gambetti. Sounds like a mobster name, huh? Gambetti. He's a mobster. He's a New York mobster.
Yeah.
Another Franciscan who was tapped is Friar Mauro Gambetti, in charge of the Sacred Convent in Assisi. The Pope, so I believe Assisi is a place where they had a miracle with a bunch of little girls, I believe. Don't quote me on that. The Pope, when elected in 2013, chose Saint Francis of Assisi as his namesake saint. Does that mean like vice pope? So like a vice pope, I guess, I don't know. Earlier this month, the pontiff journeyed to that hill town and the Umbrian to sign an encyclical or important church teaching document about brotherhood. Gambetti was so surprised at first, he thought the Pope was joking when he heard he was named. Covenant spokesperson, the Reverend Enzo Fertono, said, Gambetti quickly pledged to put himself at the service of humanity at a time so difficult to us all, including offering compassion to the needy, Fertino said in a reference to the coronavirus pandemic. So how about that? The prestigious Washington Archdiocese traditionally brings elevation to cardinal's rank, so the appointment of Gregory, who's 73 last year, by the Pope had positioned him to be taped for that honor. Still, the timing of his rise to cardinal is noteworthy, coming in the thick increased U.S. attention on racial injustice following the police shooting of George Floyd, a black man, in Minnesota this year. Gregory was publicly critical of U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to the St. John Paul II National Shrine in Washington on a day after civil rights demonstrations were forcefully cleared from a square to facilitate the president's visit to an Episcopal church in the U.S. Capitol. So that's interesting, huh? Sometimes it's those people, the Pope and everything, they're interesting. So here's something on the election, okay? Election 2020. Trump aide says we're not going to control the pandemic. Londonderry, New Hampshire. The coronavirus has reached into the heart of the White House once more, little more than a week before Election Day, as it scorches the nation, and the president's top aide says we're not going to control the pandemic. Officials on Sunday scoffed at the notion of dialing back in-person campaigning despite positive tests from several aides to Vice President Mike Pence, who leads the White House Coronavirus Task Force. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, pressed to explain why the pandemic cannot be reined in, said because it is a contagious virus, just like the flu. He told CNN's State of the Union, Jake Tapper, that the government was focused on getting effective therapeutics and vaccines to the market. Pence, who tested negative on Sunday, according to his office, planned an afternoon rally in North Carolina, while the president held an afternoon rally in New Hampshire and visited an orchard in Levant, Maine, where he signed autographs and assured a crush of mostly unmasked supporters that a red wave was coming on November 3rd. Democrat Joe Biden attended church and planned to participate in a virtual Get Out the Vote concert at night. He said in a statement that Meadows was effectively waving the white flag of defeat and a candid acknowledgement of what President Trump's strategy has clearly been from the beginning of this crisis. In a brief exchange with reporters before the orchard visit, Trump demurred when asked if Pence should step off the campaign trail as precaution. You have to ask him, Trump said. The White House said none of the staff traveling with Trump on Sunday has been in close contact with any individuals in the vice president's office who have tested positive. But public health experts said that Pence's decision to keep up an in-person campaign was flouting common sense. If Pence did not self-quarantine, it would violate every core public health principle his own task force recommends, said Lawrence Gostin, a public health official expert at Georgetown University School of Law. It's one of standards for the vice president and another for all the rest of us. The US set a daily record Friday for new confirmed coronavirus infections and nearly matched it Saturday with 83,178. Data published by Johns Hopkins University shows. Close to 8.6 million Americans have contracted the coronavirus since the pandemic began, and about 225,000 have died. Both totals are the world's highest, and half of the states have seen their highest daily infection numbers so far at some point in October. Trump, campaigning in Londonderry, New Hampshire, said that the rising rate of infections was nothing to be concerned about. You know, why would we have so much case? Trump asked, a shoulder-to-shoulder crowd. Because all we do is a test.
He's full of shit.
he's full of shit. Okay. Entering the final full week before the November 3rd election, it's clear the Trump team remains committed to full throttle campaigning. Trump himself has resumed a hectic schedule since recovering from his own recent coronavirus case and planned to appear with Pence at a rally today in Pennsylvania. Pence was returning to North Carolina on Tuesday. Despite the rising virus numbers, the White House says the U.S. economy needs to fully reopen, and it has tried to counter Biden's criticism that Trump is not doing enough to contain the worst U.S. public crisis in more than a century. So since the Spanish flu in 1916. Trump and his aide again on Sunday lashed out on Biden, falsely asserting Biden was determined to lock down the economy, while the president is centering his attention on getting therapies and vaccines to the market. We want normal life to resume, Trump said. We just want normal life back. So yeah, Wayne said he's full of crap. Interesting, right? All right, so let's look at local news. That was national, international news. Look at some local news. And again, today is Monday, October 26, 2020. So this is an interesting one. It's called Commemorating a Dark Time, a memorial to local Japanese Americans interned during the war will be installed in downtown Hayward. So does everybody remember after Pearl Harbor what happened with all the Japanese Americans that lived in California and around the country? They literally had their homes, their businesses, and their farms taken from them, and they were put in internment camps. Yes, they were put in internment camps because after Pearl Harbor, there was a fervor about all the Japanese Americans were spies, or some of them were spies. So instead of trying to figure out who were the spies, they just locked up everybody.
All the Japanese.
Yes, all the Japanese Americans that were here from Hawaii all the way to Maine and Alaska, they were all put in internment camps. And they lost their businesses, they lost their farms, they lost their houses. And in some communities, especially Sacramento, there was a big Japanese community in Sacramento. In fact, there's a portion of I-80 right now that after the war, before the war, it was called Japantown. And there used to be a lot of farms out there that the Japanese used to own. And during that time, it's right over by the near downtown Sacramento. But during that time, again, all these farms, they had orange fields, all this stuff. When they were put in internment camps, there were obviously people who loved their neighbors, and they loved, even though they're Japanese, they still loved them. And during the war, they helped take care of their farms. So that when they came back, when they were let out of the camps, they came back and they were able to get back to their farms and their houses. There were other places where certain Americans did not like the Japanese at all. So instead of taking care of the farms for them, they just stole the farms. Legally stole the farms from the Japanese. So the Japanese came back, the Japanese had to fight in court to try to get their land back. And many of them never got their land back or their houses back, and they had to move someplace else. Yeah.
That's not just.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. So let's look at this. Hayward. Fred Shinada was 9 years old that May morning in 1942 as he stood with other Japanese Americans on Watkins Street waiting to board buses bound for internment camps. I was kind of overwhelmed by everything, said Shinada, now 87. But what I remember well is all the luggage stacked on the sidewalk. It belonged to the people who were leaving. And all they were allowed to take was what they could carry. Yeah. So imagine your house right now, and somebody said, we're taking you away. The only thing you can take is what you can carry. How difficult would that be? Just the trauma involved in that. I mean, that's just, it's unimaginable unless you go through it. Man. Artwork is now planned to mark where Shinada and approximately 600 other Japanese Americans assembled after Franklin D. Roosevelt signed an executive order for the removal following the attack on Pearl Harbor, which thrust the United States into World War II against Germany and Japan. Let's see. Roosevelt's action came as a jittery American feared the Japanese military would invade the West Coast and that the sympathizers among Japanese Americans might help them. So yeah, they thought the Japanese would invade California, Oregon, and Washington, and that these Japanese, if they didn't intern them, would help the Japanese, which was complete BS. Because these Japanese Americans were more American than some of the Americans who put them in internment camps. They were literally more American than the people who put them in the internment camps. Crazy. In all, about 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry were interned. Most were United States citizens. Also at the Hayward Assembly Point was famed photographer Dorothea Lange, capturing the relocation through her job with the U.S. War Relocation Authority. One photograph shows Eddie Namoru, senior class president of Hayward High School, sitting on a suitcase and reading a magazine as he waits to be taken away. Ugh. Another shows 9 members of the Machida family standing next to their suitcases. The children wear identification tags hanging from their necks. That reminds you of like Jewish internment, right? Where they had to have the Star of David on their arm. Like they put literally collars around their necks saying, I'm Japanese. Oh, it's amazing what people can do when they're scared. For 1942. It's amazing what humans can do to other human beings when they're scared. Fear is a dangerous thing. Fear is a very good thing for humans to have, but it's also very dangerous. Fear can lead to good change. It can also lead to catastrophic change, right? The road to hell was paved with good intentions. Good intentions, yeah. Another shows 9 members of the Machida family standing next to their suitcases. The children wear identification tags hanging from their necks. After they registered on Watkins Street, the internees were bused to Tanforan Racetrack in San Bruno, where some lived for months until they were sent to one of 10 huge camps in remote places such as Manzanar in the Owens Valley. I have no idea where that is. Manzanar. It's important that we commemorate significant parts of our history, Mayor Barbara Holliday said after the planned artwork. The proposed piece comes amid the broader public discussion about statues and buildings names and who and what should be recognized, she said. She said, with that, I think we now have a better understanding of the kind of things that should be commemorated, Holliday said. Shinada was with his mother, brother, and 2 sisters when they showed up in downtown Hayward for relocation. They ended up in a camp at Topaz in Utah. Authorities had taken his father into custody the day after the Pearl Harbor attack. He caught the government's attention, Shinada said, because he was an active leader in the Japanese American community. So when you really, it doesn't matter where you are in the world or what time of the world, what people do to basically eradicate a certain group of people is they go after the intellectual leaders of the community. So during World War II, that's what they did with the Jews. They went after the intellectual people first. They went after doctors, they went after lawyers, they went after professors, things like that. If you look at the Armenian genocide, it didn't start with killing of all the just regular people. It started off with killing the people who could pass on the history of the Armenian people. Poets, artists, like I said, doctors, professors, those people were killed first. Because if you kill those people who know everything about a certain ethnicity or community, then it can't be passed on. If it can't be passed on, it gets lost. If it gets lost, then those people who you don't want to know it will now assimilate into your group. So it's a very effective tool used by tyrants to get what they want from people, undesirables. They punish and they scrutinize all the intellectuals. They did it in China during the Mao Revolution in China in the 60s. Okay, they made people apologize or just flat out kill them who were intellectuals. Scary.
Yes.
I went off on a tangent there, sorry.
Well, I hope that never happens.
It's going on as we speak. It's going on in countries around the world as we speak. There's genocide happening. There's Holocaust type things that are happening all around the world. It's happening in China. It's happening in South America. It's happening in parts of the Middle East, where there's literally governments who are purging people, ethnicities, because they think they don't get along, even though we're all humans and we all want the same thing. We may have different ways of thinking about it or getting there, but we all want the same thing. We all want food, we all want shelter, we all want health, and we all want to have the best future for our kids.
Yes.
Plain and simple, right? All right, you can see here. Authorities had taken his father into custody because he was an active leader in the Japanese American community. His father, who before internment owned a business growing roses on 6 acres of East 14th Street in San Leandro, rejoined the family after about 4 months. And they probably tortured him too. When the war ended, Shinada entered San Leandro High School, which then offered classes starting at the 7th grade. I was really frightened to go back to school, he said. I was afraid I was going to be beaten up. There weren't many minorities in San Leandro at the time. All white people in San Leandro at the time. Shinada went on to attend UC Berkeley, serve in the Army, and have a career in finance. He married and has an adopted son, and he still lives in San Leandro. So far, there is no design for the artwork to mark the downtown assembly spot. Hayward is now seeking applications from artists. The city has allocated $40,000 for the project, said Mary Thomas, a management analysis for Hayward. Artist submissions are due by 5 p.m. Saturday. For information, go to the city's website at hayward-california.gov and go to the artist all call page. Work on the future Hayward Heritage Plaza is taking place at C and Mission Streets, where the old main library was, and across from the new one, which has been named the 21st Century Library and Community Learning Center. It's a perfect name for the library, right? Don't name it after somebody, because in the future, but we hate that person 100 years from now. We hate that person. Just name it the 21st Century Library, so nobody can be offended. The plaza also will eventually have art honoring the Ohlone Indians who lived in what is now Hayward before Europeans arrived. The plaza will have children's play area, walking paths, and a 25,000 square foot grassy field where people can picnic, host public gatherings, or just be outside. However, the plaza will not have any restrooms. The overall cost, that's weird. Like it's gonna pee on the grass. Let's go find a tree and pee on it, right?
Keep it green.
Yeah, exactly. The overall cost of the new library and plaza, which the city considers intertwined projects, totals about $60 million. Much of the money is coming from Measure C, a half-cent sales tax that Hayward voters approved in 2014. I think it's a good thing, Shinada said about the future artwork. It's important we remember what happened and never do it again. So that was a good story, huh? That was a well-written article about that. And I went off on my tangents to fill in the gaps a little bit. Let's see what else we got. Let's go to the advice column. My favorite. The advice column. I think there's another one too. Who's that one guy I like? Maybe he's not in here today. I don't think he's in here today. Let's see. Nope, he's not in here today. So we're going to go to the advice column. And for this advice column, there's two of them. There's mismanners and there's advice. Long ago, cheating still an issue. So again, it's called Ask Amy. So people write into Amy Dickerson and they ask her certain things about their life. And she gives an answer. Okay? So this was the first one. Dear Amy, after almost 20 years ago, when my husband and I were just 19 years old, he cheated on me. 20 years on, I'm still having a hard time trusting him. Will I ever be able to trust him, or will I always feel this way? What can I do to start trusting him? I feel like I have some form of PTSD from it. He says he was young and made a mistake, but is that even a legitimate excuse? He has apologized so many times. I just don't know what to do anymore. I want to live free. I want to live free. It is so time-consuming worrying about him and trying to track him. I'm constantly accusing him of things that turn out to be nothing. We have 5 children together, and he is a wonderful dad and an even more wonderful husband. I know I'll regret it later if I don't get it together now. How should I handle this?
Leave it alone.
So how do you think she should handle the situation? Her husband, so let's backtrack a little bit. So they got married at 19 years old. Her husband cheated on her when they first got together. And to this day, she cannot get over the fact that he cheated on her, and she doesn't fully trust him. Even though they've had 5 kids together, and he's been honest ever since, and has apologized over and over again, so deep down inside, she still does not trust him, and it's affected her relationship with him. So what do you think she should do?
Leave it alone.
You think she should leave it alone? Are you at home? You think she should leave it alone?
Yes.
Or do you?
I mean, all these years.
It's been 20 years, and he hasn't cheated since, or he says he hasn't.
Yeah,
But his excuse was he was young and stupid.
right.
He was young and stupid at 19 years old, right? 19 years old is really young to be getting married. As a man, 19 years old, man, there's so much other women out there. You're gonna be like, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that, right? Look,
Right.
squirrel, right? So let's see what Amy's advice says. 20 years is an extremely long time for you to live in a state of high alert, and for your husband to tolerate your ongoing and very disruptive and baseless accusations. It is a testament to your mutual commitment to each other and a marvel that your marriage has survived. That was my thing. I'm surprised their marriage survived 20 plus years and 5 kids. A constant rumination paralyzes your problem-solving skills, distracts you from the positive tending of your relationship, can affect your physical health, and is overall very time-consuming. Your husband has been forced to react to your compulsions and accusations, and I assume you are exhausted from this. Excuse me. A psychologist might diagnose you with obsessive rumination disorder, which can be triggered by PTSD. You might be introduced to mindfulness exercise. Ooh, man. Ooh. You might be introduced to mindfulness training, which is basically a technique where you purposely and consciously yank your mind back to the present whenever you find yourself obsessing. You will be retraining your brain to refocus, and eventually your brain will refocus without you prompting it. Additionally, I am certain that you would benefit from talk therapy. Why were you so traumatized by an event that many others process and recover from? Insight into this will be life-changing for you. Insight and self-knowledge will bring you into a new relationship, not only with yourself, but with your husband and your children. So that's good advice, right?
All those years,
She's got to talk it out with somebody. She's got to go through it and talk it out so she can break it down and eventually be able to get over it. Because they're in their mid-40s right now. 20 years is a long time to hold a grudge.
Yes, too long.
I don't know.
I don't know.
This is kind of a weird remark, but I believe, in my own personal experience, I think that women hold grudges more than men do. Yes. Men, in my experience, will hold a grudge for like a day or two, and then we'll fight or cuss each other out, and then we'll be friends the next day. Right?
Yeah.
Just hit each other with either physically or verbally, and then you'll be friends. But women, they can hold a grudge forever. They don't like somebody.
And take all the trust they had for the man out of the man.
Exactly.
Every time you walk out the door, something people did.
Yep.
So I used to leave that alone.
All right, let's look at the next Dear Ask Amy. So, Dear Amy, Hopeful did not want her fiance's friend to come to their wedding because he had disrespected her in the past. She did not have to invite, nor should she be expected to invite someone who has shown such contempt. And a man who would invite someone who referred to his fiance as sloppy seconds has no respect for his partner or himself. Wow. So her fiance is inviting a friend who calls her sloppy seconds. Oh, goodness. Let's see what Amy's answer is. Dear Diallo, one wonders why the fiance was so eager to invite him. That's the response. Yeah, I don't know why either. Interesting. That's good, right? All right. So
Then they have Dear Abby and all.
exactly, the Dear Abby columns. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got here. Here's a fun story. This is about animals.
Okay.
Title: Relax, Oakland. Gerald the turkey has been captured. An Oakland neighborhood under siege for 5 months by a wild turkey full of rage has been liberated. Gerald the pugnacious fowl has been captured. The turkey has been terrorizing Oakland's Grand Lake neighborhood since May, when his frequent attacks on unsuspecting passerbyers forced the closure of the Marcone Rose Garden, an 8-acre municipal rose garden planted in 1932 that has more than 2,500 rose bushes. So this turkey was attacking people. They can be mean.
Oh, turkeys are terrible.
Although some people defend Gerald and spoke lovingly of him, others in the neighborhood demanded the city do something, but officials were hard-pressed to find a solution. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife recommended rounding up Gerald and sending him to that Thanksgiving Day dinner table in the sky. Wow.
What damage does a turkey do when it infects?
No, I mean, it can peck you. It can peck you. Yeah, it's got big claws.
Stretch them all.
But other than that, I mean, it's a wild animal. What do you expect?
Why not just pet it and say, put it on your way?
Just turkey, I don't know. Give it some food. So it says the California Department of Fish and Wildlife recommended rounding up Gerald and sending him to that Thanksgiving Day dinner table in the sky. But Oakland Animal Services balked at that idea. So they wanted to kill him at first and send him to the Thanksgiving table in the
That's
sky.
the American answer is
Kill it, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Instead, they first attempted to train Gerald to be a kinder and gentler gobbler, something he was not inclined to do. It took some negotiating, but the state eventually approved a plan to capture Gerald and relocate him to an area that had plenty of turkeys but no people. Why didn't they think of that first? That'd been the first thing. It's like, why don't we round him up and then put him in an open space with more turkeys? Problem solved, people, without spending $10,000 to figure it out. Oh my goodness.
What's his name?
Gerald the turkey.
Joe.
That was in August. Gerald managed to elude his would-be rescuers until Thursday morning. So since August, he's been evading the captures. Wow, it's a smart turkey. So that was in August. Gerald managed to elude his would-be rescuers until Thursday morning, when Rebecca Dimedrick, Director of Wildlife Emergency Services and a wildlife expert with more than 40 years of experience, managed to put one over on the unsuspecting turkey. Oh, buddy, let's see what she put over on him. Oh, we got to figure out what happened here. Dimedrick and her husband had made an earlier visit to the neighborhood to scope things out and size up Gerald. They had witnessed his aggressive behavior. There was just something about him that he would target people from afar and then make a beeline toward them. Dimedrick says he could be relentless. Dimedrick returned to the neighborhood Thursday morning with a plan. They had a hard time finding any of the turkeys, but eventually located Gerald, who appeared to be stalking another couple walking in the area. So you have a mean-ass turkey that stalks people. Ooh. Now, mind you, turkeys and things like that, they're actually dinosaurs. They're just modern versions of dinosaurs. Now they know that a lot of dinosaurs have feathers. So imagine like a turkey being a raptor and stalking you with teeth. Ooh, that's scary. Diemtrich tossed out Gerald's favorite food, sunflower seeds and blueberries, and that directed Gerald's attention her way. Then suddenly, things went terribly wrong. A piece of equipment they were planning to use to catch Gerald failed, and Diemtrich's husband rushed back to the truck to get a replacement. But then Gerald was very interested in both the food and Diemtrich, who had dressed in plain clothes, no uniform or patches for the operation. As Gerald gave her the eye, she decided turn the table to her advantage. She decided to turn the tables to her advantage. That's not really a typo in there. I pretended to be a frail old lady, Diemtrich says. She crouched over and tucked her arms to her chest. Oh no, she cried, go away. The more weak and fearful she appeared, the more emboldened Gerald became. Diemtrich continued the act, drawing Gerald in closer and closer. She saw something change in Gerald's eyes and knew she had him where she wanted him. As Gerald the turkey moved into the attack, she grabbed him by the scruff of the neck. Yes, she says, turkeys have neck scruffs that feel a bit like a t-shirt inside a sweatshirt, and she had him. So she grabbed him by the neck and got it. He instantly became more docile, Diemtrich said, and she was able to wrap her arms around him in a secure hug, but not so tight to injure him. Her husband appeared about then, and they managed to get Gerald in a large carrier and waited for Fish and Wildlife officials to show up. The Warrens escorted Diemtrich and Gerald to the hills around Orinda, where there are plenty of wild turkeys and no humans about. They tagged him before releasing him. So they tagged him with like a satellite tag, so they know where it is. So if he ends up dead, they know. Or if it magically somehow gets back to Oakland, you can see how it got there. Let's see. They have plenty of wild turkeys and no humans about. They tagged him before releasing him, and Diemtrich says he seemed pretty happy to be there. She doesn't think he'll be any more trouble. Diemtrich praised Oakland Animal Control for refusing to let Gerald be killed, even though they took a lot of heat for it. Diemtrich says they did the right thing. Gerald's behavioral issues can be laid at the door of humans who fed him and made him lose his fear of people. So people were feeding him the whole time, which made him lose his fear of people. And my guess is that if he went up to people and they didn't give him food, he would get pissed off at him and go after them. Where's my food? And go after people. Because his favorite food was blueberries and strawberry with sunflower seeds. When Gerald would approach expecting food, people didn't know how to react. So they ran and Gerald pursued, which you don't do. You don't run from a wild animal. He quickly learned he had the upper wing. Get it? Like upper hand, upper. You like that one, John? Instead of having the upper hand, he had the upper wing. He was habitualized, Diemtrich said, and he didn't need to be killed because of what humans did to him. The moral of Gerald's story, Diemtrich says, is not to feed the wildlife. Exactly. Oh, man, that was a good story, wasn't it? I even got John to laugh. That means it was a good story. So let's go to Pleasanton. Interesting story. Killer confesses to murder of classmates 36 years later. Let's find out what it means. Let's find out what this is all about. So again, killer confesses to murder of classmate 36 years later. A man convicted of killing his 14-year-old Pleasanton classmate wrote a confession letter to the girl's family 36 years after her death. Wow. They were 14 years old. Steve Carlson was convicted in 2014 of killing Foothill freshman Tina Fales as she walked home from school in April 1984. Carlson, now 52, was supposed to have a parole hearing 2 weeks ago, but asked that it can be canceled, according to the Alameda County District Attorney Prosecutor Joe Glinge. His next hearing won't be for another 3 years. Kling asked that Carlson's confession letter be released to her to give to the family. Called remorse letters, the family wanted a sense of closure, and he's never admitted to killing. He's never admitted to the killing. In the handwritten letter he made available to the San Francisco Chronicle, Carlson confesses to the killing. He was 16 at the time of the killing and was tried as an adult in the case. Do you think kids 16 and under should be tried as adults? Because I don't. I think if you're 16 and under, you should not be tried as an adult because your brain is not fully formed. I think you should go to jail, but I think you should have a second chance at life at the age of 25. So if you murder somebody there's been cases around the country where an 8-year-old murdered somebody and they gave him the death penalty. An 8-year-old, usually in Arkansas, in the South, usually a black kid.
Yeah.
Kid 8, 9, 10 years old, and they give him the death penalty or life in prison. He's 8, 9, 10 years old. You can't. No, he doesn't know he knows right from wrong, but death isn't something that an 8-year-old can really comprehend, right? Yeah, they know right from wrong, but again, if they're 8, 9, 10, I would say in that situation, he should be in jail, but up until he's 18, and then you reevaluate. Or you put him in a special program. You got special programs for these type of kids to where they can start learning how to be members of society. Because again, at 8, 10 years old, you don't know any better. You do know right and wrong. Thou shalt not murder, but still, you're 8, 9, 10 years old.
Until he's 25.
Oh, man. So here we go. He was 16 at the time of the killing and was tried as an adult in the case. I was living in denial for many years, not being able to believe or take responsibility for brutally murdering you on that day, April 5th, 1984, he wrote. I want you and your family to know you did absolutely nothing to deserve what I did to you. That's what makes this murder so callous and horrific. The parole hearing would have been Carlson's first since being resentenced to 16 years to life in prison in 2017. When convicted in 2014 of first-degree murder, he was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison. But in 2017, a state appellate court reduced his conviction to second-degree murder, saying there was not enough evidence of premeditation and deliberation. Tina was walking home from Foothill High School and taking a shortcut on April 5th, 1984, when she was stabbed 44 times. The homicide case went cold until 2011 when DNA found on her purse linked the killing to Carlson. Wow. Carlson was a drug addict in Tina's freshman class, but had little interaction with her, according to the evidence from the trial. So he was a 16-year-old freshman? Man, something wrong there. On the day of the murder, an intoxicated Carlson left school early after being bullied by fellow classmates who had put him inside a dumpster. Oh my gosh. So this is something that could have been prevented if family, friends, the school staff would have known he was being bullied. This all happened because he was being bullied and he was using drugs and alcohol to drown out that pain. And in my guess, he was probably abused at home too. Big time. He's probably being either sexually or physically or verbally abused at home. So, I mean, no shot. He had no shot. Oh, it's so sad. It's sad that the girl was murdered, but it's sad that for him, because that never had to happen. If things were put in place to help these kids, things like this would never happen. Oh, it makes me so upset. So Carlson was a drug addicted in Tina's freshman class, but had little interaction with her according to the evidence from the trial. He lived next to the murder scene at the time. On the day of the murder, an intoxicated Carlson left school early after being bullied by fellow classmates who had put him inside a dumpster. God. He was questioned as a person of interest after Tina's death, And again in 1986 when he told people at a party that he killed Tina, but later he claimed it was a joke. In a 2011 interview with this news organization from jail, Carlson denied he killed her, stating at the time that the police were blaming him to close the case. Carlson remains in prison at the California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi. That is two lives lost because of lack of parenting and lack of oversight and supervision at school and at home. Her life, freaking tragic, but his life, if you get to him, she never dies. Ugh. Just terrible. It is. All right, so now what we're going to do, just to finish this off, we are going to look my favorite sections. We're going to end with the news of the weird. And right now we're going to do today in history, which looks back at today, which is October 26th, and look back at different October 26th in the past and their significance. Okay. So today in history, October 26, 1825. Yes. The Erie Canal opened in upstate New York, connecting Lake Erie and the Hudson River. Okay. October 26, 1949. President Harry S. Truman signed a measure raising the minimum wage from 40 to 75 cents an hour. Wow. 40 cents an hour? I mean, back then it was because there wasn't inflation, so 40 cents could get you a lot more. Could get you a lot more. Back then, a brand new car cost like $2,500 for a brand new car. An expensive car was $5,000. Like an expensive Cadillac. Because it went the Ford Model T, you had like the Plymouth, and the upscale one was the Cadillac. If you had the Cadillac, you were balling.
Yeah.
You were rolling in dough. October 26, 1984. Baby Faye, a newborn with a severe heart defect, was given the heart of a baboon in an experimental transplant in Loma Linda, California. Wow, I didn't know that. Did you know that? It was Baby Faye, and she was given the heart of a baboon. So let's find out what happened to Baby Faye. This doesn't say. I'm really interested in knowing what happened to Baby Faye. Let's see. Oh, she died. Okay. Yeah, let's read about Baby Faye. So Stephanie Faye Beauclair, better known as Baby Faye, was an American infant born in 1984 with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. She became the first infant subject of an xenotransplant procedure and first successful infant heart transplant, receiving the heart of a baboon. Though she died within a month of the procedure, she lived weeks longer than any previous recipient of a non-human heart. How about that? She lived a month. She lived 32 days. But she would have died way before that. She didn't get the heart. So, I mean, for the parents, what would you do? What would you do in that situation? If the doctors came up to you and said, "Well, your newborn baby is going to die. So we can either have this experimental heart transplant where she may die on the operating table, or she may, if it is successful, the heart takes, she'll live a little bit longer." Which one would you choose? Would you just let your baby die, or would you have them do the procedure and maybe live a month longer? What would you do? And you would do the procedure?
Yes.
Because you never know what can happen after, right? If your baby's gonna die anyways, might as well do it. How about you, Wayne?
I think it would let you take its course.
So you would let nature take its course and just let the baby go to God? Okay. How about you, John? What would you do?
I'd just,
Do what Andy did?
yeah.
So you would go for the heart transplant.
Yes.
Okay. How about you, Frank? What would you do?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's hard because we're not in that situation, right?
I couldn't,
Right.
It's hard to make the decision when you've never been in a situation. How about you, Jose? What would you do? You would do the transplant? Okay. And you at home, what would you do? Personally, I don't even know what I would do in that situation. I don't have kids, so I can't even imagine what that would be like to have, my son or daughter just being born, I'm holding her, and the doctor says she's going to die within a couple days. Or you can have a heart transplant where she's going to die in a month. I mean, I would probably pick the heart transplant because I want to see my baby I want to spend time with my baby and let my baby know that I love him or her to death, that I would do anything to keep her alive. If I could give her my own heart, I would.
Yes.
Right? If I could give my baby my heart, I would do that so that she could live, even if it was another 10 years. At the very most, I would give her that. All right. So that was interesting. October 26, 2001. President George W. Bush signed the U.S. Patriot Act, giving authorities unprecedented ability to search, seize, detain, or eavesdrop in the pursuit of possible terrorists. That was the Patriot Act, which was a horrible act. It was only supposed to be temporary. Guess what? 20 years later, it's still in place. Anytime the government says we're going to sign this into law temporarily, that is complete BS. Yes. They're never going to rescind that law. Never going to rescind the law. All right. Now we're going to end with the news of the weird. Mm-hmm. No, we'll do another animal kingdom. This is interesting. Beetle armor gives clues for durable construction. Interesting. This is from New York. It's a beetle that can withstand bird pecks, animal stomps, and even being rolled over by a Toyota Camry. Wow. Now scientists are studying what the bug's crush-resistant shell could teach them about designing stronger planes and buildings. This beetle is super tough, said Purdue University civil engineer Pablo Zavateri, who was among a group of researchers that ran over the insect with a car as part of a new study. So they ran it over with a Toyota Camry and the bug was still alive. The beetle was still alive. That's how strong its shell is. So how does this seemingly indestructible insect do it? The species, aptly named diabolical ironclad beetle, owes its might to an unusual armor that is layered and pieced together like a jigsaw, according to the study by Zavateri and his colleagues, published in Nature on Wednesday. And its design, they say, could help inspire more durable structures and vehicles. To understand what gives the inch-long beetle its strength, researchers first tested how much squishing it would take. The species, which can be found in Southern California's woodlands, withstood compression of about 39,000 times its own weight. Whoa! So if any of us were crushed with 39 times our weight, we'd be like freaking pancakes after. We'd be dead. This beetle's like, walk it off. That's crazy. For a 200-pound man, that would be like, so again, this species can be found in Southern California's woodlands, withstood compression of about 39,000 times its own body weight. For example, for a 200-pound man, that would be like surviving a 7.5 million pound crush. Oh. Other local beetle species shattered under 1/3 of its own pressure. So they threw a bunch of beetles under a car to see which one squished. Oh, it's killed all the poor little beetles to see which one squishes the fastest. Oh man. Researchers then use electron microscopes and CT scans to examine the beetle's exoskeleton and figure out what made it so strong. As is often the case for flightless beetles, the species Elytra, a protective case that normally sheathes wings, has strengthened and toughened over time. Up close, scientists realized this cover also benefited from special jigsaw-like binding and layered architecture. When compressed, they found the structure fractured slowly instead of snapping all at once. When you pull them apart, Zanez says, it doesn't break catastrophically. It just deforms a little bit. That's crucial for the beetle. It could also be useful for engineers and who design aircrafts and other vehicles and building with a variety of materials such as steel, plastic, and plasters. Currently, engineers rely on pins, bolts, welding, and adhesives to hold everything together, but those techniques can be prone to degrading. In the structure of beetle shells, nature offers an interesting and elegant alternative, Zavateri said. Because the beetle-inspired design fractures in a gradual and predictable way, cracks could be more reliably inspected for safety, said Hao Yu Chen, an engineer at Taiwan's National Tsinghua University, not involved in the research. The Beetle Study is part of an $8 million project funded by the U.S. Air Force to explore how the biology of creatures can help develop impact-resistant materials. So isn't it amazing how nature has led to so many great innovations in building and, unfortunately, in war and flight? Just amazing. All right, we're going to end here with news of the weird. Tynette Housley, 73, of Black Forest, Colorado, was cited by Colorado Parks and Wildlife officials after her pet deer attacked and gored a neighbor who was out walking her dog on October 16th. The buck, now sporting two-pronged antlers, was taken in by Housley when it was just a few days old and raised as a pet. The victim tried to run first to another neighbor's home, then to her own, but the buck repeatedly knocked her down and gored her. A CPW officer, so a Colorado Parks and Wildlife officer, euthanized the deer and took it in for testing for rabies and other diseases. We can't say it enough. Wild animals are not pets, said Frank McGee, Colorado Parks and Wildlife area wildlife manager. Housley was charged with illegal possession of illegally feeding of wildlife. So she had to have this deer for years. So she got it when she rescued the deer when it was a few days old, and now it has big antlers. So it has to be at least 5 years old.
Yeah.
I'm sure she loved that deer to death, and the deer. I'm pretty sure the deer got used to her as a baby. I mean, the deer, you have to get used to it.
She raised.
Yeah, and then the deer probably saw the dog and tried to go after the dog and got the owner instead, the neighbor. Oh. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, here and abroad, for joining me today for our current events and our extracurricular stories that we had too, that came out of my own head. So again, my name is Diallo. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful day.
Too.